Chapter 1. Family. I'm the eldest of 7 kids. I've got 4 sisters and 2 brothers. My dad worked on a building site as a concrete worker. My mum was a housewife. My father always worked in England, and he spent a lot of years working as a subcontractor on the building sites. So during the summer holidays from school, we used to go over there, and I'd spend 7 to 8 weeks over there at a time, sometimes longer. That's how I started boxing, when I joined a boxing club there at the age of 10, Earlsfield Amateur Boxing Club. We used to move back and forth as kids, wherever my dad was working. We were over there, back in Ireland, over there again. It was a difficult time for my parents because the work was in England for my dad. When I was only 8 or 9, my dad was working in Manchester and we lived in Newton Heath. And because we had the Irish accent, I got bullied and my 2 front teeth knocked out. Never liked bullies. Still don't like bullies to this day. My dad used to show me and my brother a straight left in the back garden. He used to go, straight left, straight left. My dad boxed. Not at a great level, but he boxed. As an amateur, he used to box with the Corinthians Club in Dublin. Maxi McCullough, European gold medalist in 1947, was his old trainer. My mum used to do this stew. Stew was a big thing, was stew. Every day through the week, it didn't matter, but you had to be at the dinner table on a Sunday. And if you weren't at the dinner table on a Sunday, there was hell to pay. You had to be at the dinner table Sunday, and everyone waiting to eat until you're all at the table. Ringsend. That's where I'm from in Dublin. When I was a kid, I went to Star of the Sea Primary School. When I was about 7 or 8, I fell and split my head open. It was in the playground. I was running along and my sandal strap broke. I tripped and fell into the iron railings. I stood up, wasn't aware of any blood or anything, and just carried on playing. Then I became aware of all the kids screaming and pointing at me. The cut was all the way from the forehead to the middle of my head. I felt it, and it was so deep my fingers went right inside. The paramedics were amazed that I was able to walk from the playground to the ambulance, and from the ambulance into the hospital, where I had 23 stitches put in. It was a real talking point. I was even nicknamed Knucklehead for a while. But it proved, even at that age, I could take a punch. Then I moved up to Ringsend School, on the docks. My dad used to go to the docks. The boats used to put in at the docks, the Polish coal boats, and you could go down and you could get 20 pints of Polish beer for £6 Irish, and in English money they did it for £4, and you'd get a bottle of vodka for £2.50. The Polish vodka would blow the head off you. My dad used to have the poker game on a Thursday night. There was Macar O'Connor, Matty Dunphy, Joe Drumgoole, Brian Murray used to come, and Father Oliver Egan. Ken Harrington, the police officer, would come over too. We used to wait until they got drunk and they'd drop money on the floor. I used to clean up. I'd always get some, only 10p and 20p and 50p and stuff that had dropped on the floor, but that was great. One evening, Matty Dunphy stood up, twisted drunk, and he said to my dad, who's also called Joe, "Joe, I'll knock your house down." So my dad, he was twisted as well. My dad says, "Go on then, Matty, knock the house down." So he did this mad running kick at the wall, kicked the wall and he fell down. And you could see the leg was shattered. I swear to God the leg swelled up in the jeans, and we looked and the leg swelled up in the jeans. So he stood up. You could see the pain in his face, but he was that drunk he didn't realise. And he said, "Joe, I won't knock your house down, otherwise you'll have nowhere to live." And he walked out. This was about 4:30 in the morning. The next day, we're up maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock to pick up the coins that had dropped on the floor. Then we said we're going to check on Matty. So me and my brother went round to Matty's house. He was still living with his mother. Knocked on the door. Mrs. Murphy opened the door. "Hello, Mrs. Murphy, is Matty in?" "No," she said. "He went out for a game of cards. He never came back." So we said we'll have a look around for him. So we're looking around. He's fallen into a garden and he's asleep in the front of the garden. So me and my brother just phoned an ambulance, because there's no point in trying to attend to him. So we just phoned an ambulance. And we waited. Later, the ambulance came. He'd broken his leg in 3 places, shattered the leg, the ankle, the knee, and the hip or whatever. The leg was smashed, but the jeans had kept the swelling from going too far. He'd given the wall a right kick. It wasn't even a row, it was just full of drink madness. My nan used to have a grocery shop at the front, and in the lane she had the back shop, which was the fruit and vegetable shop. Opposite my grandmother's back shop was Mrs. Holmes' butcher's. She used to sell the pork. At the front there was Farrelly's, which was the main butcher's for the steaks and stuff like that, but this was the pork shop in the lane. There was a big lad used to deliver the meat, the pork, on one of them big old butcher's bikes. And he used to come out of the butcher's shop, and instead of wheeling the bike up the hill, he used to get onto the bike to cycle it. It's the easiest way to get to the top of the hill, right? And he used to get onto the bike, and he'd be cycling the bike up the hill, and his arse used to be hanging out of his trousers. So he used to ride it right to the top. Me and my brother, I was about 11 or 12, got this big leather belt. The butcher's lad would come by, he'd be on the bike, and we'd jump out, whack him with a belt, hit him across the backside, turn and run, hell for leather. We'd be laughing. Anyway, this particular day, we did it once too often. I was at the side, crouched, to spring. As I jumped out, he threw the bike on the ground because he was ready for us. He was already half off the bike. He threw the bike on the ground and he turned. And I tell you, I turned at the same time he turned. The fear. His hands came down the back of my neck, just missed me. If he'd caught me, he would have kicked 10 sorts of shit out of me. And I ran. I ran as fast as my legs would take me. My brother was gone. He was gone like a whippet. I tell you, we never did that again. Me and my brother were in the Sea Scouts because my dad encouraged us to do lots of things just to stay off the streets. We also joined the St. John Ambulance Brigade. We used to row with the Sea Scouts. I was in the 4th Port Dodder Sea Scouts from the Dodder Canal, which runs through Dublin. The first port was Ringsend, and although I was from Ringsend, the Ringsend troop was too full. So I joined the 4th Port Dodder. Me and my brother were in the same rowing crew. John Allen was the cox, Dermot Murray was the stroke. I was the second stroke. My brother was second bow, and Frank Sheen was the bow. That was the 4 crew. We won the Wood Latimer Cup, which is the oldest rowing cup in Ireland. We won that in Malahide. I had some great years in the Sea Scouts. My nan used to drink in a pub called Clark's Pub, and they used to have a room where all the old dears used to have a drink. And they used to call it the Diddy Room, and all the old uns used to drink in there. So, after me and my brother used to box, and win or lose, we used to have to bring our trophies down and show my nan. And we used to go to other different pubs, and different people would give you £1, 50p. You'd get a bit of a collection together. We were only kids, but they used to bring us into the Diddy Room, and all the old dears used to go, "Oh look, give us a kiss," and they'd be pulling me, and they'd all try to kiss you. Of course, they were all pissed drunk. When you're a kid, you're thinking, oh, but you come out, you made a few bob. And my mum used to insist on us going because she was proud of us, and she used to bring us round. We didn't mind going to the other pubs. They'd say, "Oh, well done, you lost or you won, well done," and give you 50p. It was my nan's hometown. There was all my aunts and uncles and all their friends, my mum and dad's friends, and we had a bit of a collection. But the last one was the Diddy Room. Oh, Jesus. You'd have more bruises coming out of there than you would from the fight, because all these old dears grabbed at you, squeezing your arse and everything. It was funny. My mum only ever hit me once, and what I was after doing was throwing stones. I didn't think it was bad what I'd done. And she came out, and I was with a load of my friends, 6 or 7 of my friends, and she had the tennis racket, and she gave me a whack with the tennis racket. I was embarrassed getting hit in front of my friends, so I wouldn't cry. I just wouldn't cry. And I looked at my friends like I'm a tough guy. And because I was goading her on then, she hit me again. And I looked at my friends. Now, it's not hurting me, but it was killing me. Anyway, she was like McEnroe with the tennis racket. She took lumps out of me with the tennis racket. She couldn't hit me with her hands. It would have hurt her hands. After a good few whacks, she was tired of hitting me, and the tennis racket was all bent up, and she went off crying, "You're no good to me." So I looked at my friends like all macho. I haven't cried. I've took the beating and I haven't cried. Then my friends went off. As soon as they were round the corner, boy was I in agony, and I went upstairs to bed with bruises, cuts and lumps out of me. After a while my mum came up. She felt really bad that she was having to hit me, because she'd never hit me before and she's never hit me since. And she was so upset that she come up. Anyway, with big hugs and kissing, she said, "Are you all right?" "Yeah." "Why didn't you cry after the first whack?" If I'd have cried after the first whack, she'd have stopped. I was too proud to cry in front of my friends. I'm not saying that I don't cry. I've cried loads of times, but sometimes you bottle it up till you're on your own. Both my parents have been a good guiding light. My dad always instilled discipline. He's raised a good family. He's been a hard-working man. My mum made sure none of us have gone hungry. My brothers and sisters, we were brought up well. At that time when I was boxing as a kid, I always had great confidence in myself. I always felt a winner. I was very heavy, over 10 stone. I'd had a couple of fights in England. I boxed a kid from Battersea, Michael Simmons, fought him a couple of times, and I fought a guy called Robert Parker a couple of times. So I'd had like 5 or 6 fights in England from the age of 10 to 12. So I've come home to Ireland, and for my first fight in Ireland I was boxing with the Dunor Boxing Club. I'd come up to the club and they said, "You're boxing Sunday afternoon at the Phoenix Boxing Club at the back of Ryan's Barbers." I asked Tony Mahan, my trainer, "Who am I boxing?" He said, "You're boxing a novice. The guy doesn't have any fight in him." At that stage, I'd had several fights. Nothing great, they're only kids. So I thought, well, I should be able to beat him handy enough. I've had 5 or 6 fights. Showing great confidence, but I was scared on the inside. When I arrived at the Phoenix Boxing Club, there was a friend of mine there, a guy called Skinner Evans from Ringsend, the same town as me in Dublin, but he was boxing with the Phoenix Boxing Club. He was with this other fella, and I looked heavy, and Skinner goes, "Hey there, Joe, are you boxing?" "Hello, Skinner. Yeah, I'm boxing some novice," I said. "I'll knock him out." So Skinner said, "Oh great, good luck to you." So I said to the other fellow with Skinner, "Are you boxing as well?" He said, "Yeah." He just looked an average. Even though I was a kid, I looked heavy. So I said, "Good luck to you." "I don't need luck. I'm going to knock my fella out." So next of all, I'm in the ring. I'm looking across the far side of the ring. I've seen that face before. It was the man I'd met outside with Skinner Evans. But he looked smaller than me because I was heavy, and it turned out it was Steve Collins. But at the time he was a year older. He still is a year older than me. But at that age, when you're 12 to 13, a year makes a big difference. The fight referee is a guy called Lugs Brannigan. He's a legend in Dublin, an ex-Garda officer, a one-man riot squad. We used to call him Lugs because of his ears. Lugs Brannigan. This is my first experience of Lugs, my first experience of boxing in Ireland, and it starts off with Stephen Collins giving me a right good pasting throughout that first round. So I go back to the corner and Tony, my trainer, says, "I'm going to retire you." I says, No, don't retire me, don't retire me. The referee will stop it if I'm getting too badly hurt. Let the referee stop it. It's not as embarrassing getting stopped by the referee as throwing the towel in, and referees should not let you get pasted. So I've gone back out for round 2. What I didn't realise was Lugs thought everybody that was boxing was as tough as him. I learned a hard lesson the hard way. Steve Collins pounded me to a pulp. I lost on points, but I went the distance. I cried for weeks, and we became great friends afterwards. I boxed him years later at the Youth Championships, but I was that bit older, a bit more experienced, where a year didn't make that much difference. And he went down then from heavyweight to light heavyweight, and then down to middleweight. I have a running joke about it with Steve, because a couple of times in recent years I've done functions with him. Steve says, "We boxed once," and I say, "No, Steve, we boxed twice. I hit you that hard in the second fight you don't remember it." But he's been a good friend over the years. More credit to him for what he achieved in becoming WBO middleweight champion. He's always had a great boxing pedigree. It's in his family. His uncles were great boxers. The Collins family are well known in Dublin for the boxing and for the football, and they're well respected in boxing circles. I was struggling to get fights when I was a kid because they're strict on the age and the weight when you're a kid. So I didn't start to get many fights until I was 16, 17, and then at that stage I was thrown in with the men. So I hadn't served much of an apprenticeship in the boxing, and suddenly I'm at senior level. But I done well. I won 4 senior titles, 2 under-19 titles and a junior. I won the under-19s, the junior and the senior in 1 year. I loved boxing. Wherever I could get a fight, I'd set up home. I had a good fight once in Newcastle. I set up home in Newcastle. I went away with the North East Division's team to box in Denmark. The guy over in Denmark, Morgan's pal, said he'd get me fights, so I stayed over there too. I just love to fight. Win, lose or draw. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I didn't really enjoy the running. I wasn't really mad keen on the running. I would jog along at my own speed, walking pace, did the odd sprint. But in the gym, I used to love the gym. Punch the bag, do the pads and spar.